The distress beacon flickered weakly across the barren moon of Epsilon 7, a forgotten rock on the edge of explored space. Lieutenant Emma Voss had been left there 3 days ago, her leg shattered, her supplies dwindling, and her crew, if they could still be called that, long gone. The mutiny had been swift and brutal. When she'd refused to falsify the survey reports that would have made them all rich, they'd made their choice. A broken woman on a dead moon was easier to explain than a whistleblower. Emma pressed her back against the cold metallic hull of the abandoned mining station, her breath forming small clouds in the thin atmosphere her helmet struggled to process. The pain in her leg had become a constant companion, a screaming reminder that she was still alive, though for how much longer she couldn't say. Her suit's medical nanites had done what they could, but without proper supplies, infection was inevitable. She'd stopped hoping for rescue after the first day. The second day, she'd made peace with her fate. By the third day, she'd begun recording her testimony, determined that someone, someday, would know the truth about the Xantharian ore deposits her crew had wanted to claim illegally. That's when the ship appeared. It wasn't a military vessel or a corporate freighter. It was small, barely larger than a personal transport, and it moved with a recklessness that made Emma's tactical training cringe. The pilot brought it down hard, kicking up clouds of rust-colored dust that settled slowly in the low gravity. The airlock hissed open and a figure emerged, human, male, moving with purpose. Elijah Cross had been called many things in his 32 years: smuggler, fool, bleeding heart, and occasionally hero, though he disputed that last one vigorously. He'd picked up Emma's beacon purely by accident, having taken a shortcut through the sector to avoid some people who had strong opinions about unpaid gambling debts. When he'd decrypted the signal and realized it was a Terran Alliance officer, his first instinct had been to keep flying, but then he'd listened to the message. "This is Lieutenant Emma Voss, service number 7-74 Alpha Kilo. If anyone receives this, know that the mining rights survey for Epsilon 7 was falsified by the crew of the Steadfast Venture. The Xantharian deposits are in a protected zone. They left me here to die rather than face prosecution. I don't expect rescue. I just want the truth known." Elijah had sat in his pilot's chair for a full 5 minutes staring at the coordinates. Then he'd cursed, plotted a new course, and pushed his engines harder than was strictly safe. Now approaching the wounded officer, he could see the situation was worse than he'd imagined. Her suit's integrity indicators flashed amber warnings, and the way she held her leg told him everything he needed to know about triage priorities. "You picked a hell of a place for a vacation," Elijah said, kneeling beside her. Emma's eyes, visible through her helmet's visor, showed surprise, then suspicion. "You're not Alliance military." "Nope, just a guy who happened to be in the neighborhood." He was already scanning her injuries with his handheld medical unit, his face growing grim. "I'm going to level with you, Lieutenant. Your leg is badly infected, and your suit is losing atmospheric integrity. We need to move now." "Why?" Emma asked, and there was something profound in that simple question. "Why did you come?" Elijah paused, meeting her eyes. In them, he saw someone who'd been betrayed by the people she'd trusted most, someone who'd lost faith in the basic goodness of others. He'd seen that look before in the mirror years ago. "Because someone has to," he said simply. "Because you did the right thing, and doing the right thing shouldn't be a death sentence. And because," he grinned slightly, "I've always had a problematic streak when it comes to leaving people behind." He didn't wait for her response. With practiced efficiency born of too many emergency extractions, Elijah secured Emma's arm around his shoulders and lifted her, careful of the injured leg. She gasped in pain but didn't cry out. "Tough," he noted with approval. The journey to his ship was only 50 meters, but in the low gravity, carrying an injured person in a failing environment suit, it felt like kilometers. Emma's breathing grew labored, and Elijah could hear the strain in her suit's recyclers. "Stay with me, Lieutenant," he urged, his own breathing growing heavy. "You don't get to record a badass testimony like that and then check out before seeing it through. That's not how this story ends. You listen to it?" Emma's voice was weak, every word. "And I know some people at the Alliance Ethics Board who would very much like to hear it too. But you have to stay alive to testify in person. Recordings can be dismissed as fabrications." "You can't. They reached the ship." Elijah's medical bay was small but well equipped, another benefit of his previous life's questionable associations. He got Emma onto the examination table and immediately began cutting away the damaged sections of her suit. The leg was worse than he'd feared, the infection spreading rapidly. "This is going to hurt," he warned, prepping the surgical laser and broad-spectrum antibiotics. "Everything hurts," Emma replied. But there was something new in her voice. Hope, perhaps, or maybe just the stubborn human refusal to give up. Elijah worked through the night, or what passed for night in space. He cleaned the wound, fought back the infection, stabilized the fracture, and regenerated as much damaged tissue as his equipment allowed. Emma drifted in and out of consciousness, but whenever she surfaced, she found Elijah there, monitoring her vitals, adjusting treatments, refusing to let her slip away. When she finally woke fully, they were in transit. Through the viewport, she could see the familiar blue-green marble of Earth growing larger. "You're taking me home," she whispered. Elijah looked up from his navigation console and smiled. "I'm taking you to testify. There's a difference. Home is where people care whether you live or die. I'm taking you to people who'll make sure your crew answers for what they did." Emma felt tears prick her eyes. She'd been left to die, abandoned by those she'd served with, and she'd been saved by a stranger who had every reason to stay far away from alliance entanglements. "Why?" she asked again, needing to understand. Elijah was quiet for a moment, his hands still on the controls. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of old pain and older wisdom. "Because that's what humans do, Lieutenant. We're stubborn, irrational, and we make terrible decisions. We risk everything for people we've never met. We fight for principles even when it costs us. And sometimes when the universe is cold and dark and tells us that one person doesn't matter, we say fuck that and prove it wrong." He turned to face her fully, and in his eyes Emma saw the truth that had sustained humanity through centuries of space exploration, first contact disasters, and galactic politics. "You weren't alone, Emma. You just didn't know I was coming yet." Outside, Earth continued to grow larger, a beacon of home and justice. And in the small ship, two humans who'd each lost faith in different ways began the slow process of finding it again, together. And